All right, let's turn our attention to an SEC insider. Trey Wallace covers the SEC for Outkick and Fox. He breaks it all down, and he joins us here on Up to the Second College Football. What's going on, Trey?
Oh, not much. Just, crazy day coming off a crazy weekend in college football and looking forward to another one this coming up weekend. Should be wild.
Yeah, so let's start things off with this Arkansas-Alabama game. Really intrigued by it for multiple reasons. Is Arkansas as good as we thought before the A&M game? Is Bama really vulnerable? Will they be able to throw? I think they will. They got Bryce Young on that Alabama secondary. Let's kind of break down that game and how you see it potentially playing out.
Yeah, I look at Arkansas and look, they kind of let one slip, I think, in Arlington, Texas A&M. But for them, they took advantage of Arkansas mistakes with the long turnover turned into a touchdown, the missing the field goal there at the end by Arkansas. But I thought Texas A&M put them in uncomfortable spots. And you look at the Arkansas offense with KJ Jefferson, I still think this is a dangerous team. I think Jefferson, along with Rock Sanders in the backfield, it presents many different challenges for the opposing defense. And I look at this game and, I look at the line that it's at right now, and I just feel like this could be one of those type of matchups where Alabama has to rely on that linebacking group led by Henry To'oTo'o to somehow get KJ Jefferson on the ground. They're just going to be able to do so many things out of the backfield. And look, I trust Alabama's defensive line, and I trust them coming off the end. But the one thing that has stood out to me over the past 2 years with Alabama's defense is they really give up the slant a lot. 10-yard slant across the middle, even the 10-yard out to the Outer Banks, to the sideline. I feel like that's one of their problems. So I look at this matchup, and I think it's going to be closer than what Vegas is thinking. I feel like Texas A&M kind of showed, okay, this is what you can do against Arkansas in a sense of trying to stop KJ Jefferson. But then, we all know you get into a crazy environment at home. I think things will pop off. Kendall Browse didn't all of a sudden stop becoming a good offensive coordinator. So the biggest thing to me is that side. And you look at Alabama with Bryce Young and what they're able to do out of the backfield. The receiving core has not been, in my opinion, up to par when it comes to Alabama in the past. But I do think that they're going to be able to go to Arkansas and score some points. I just feel like with Arkansas secondary at the moment, that this is something Alabama can potentially take advantage of. So it's going to be an interesting game Saturday. I'm kind of at that mark where I don't know about the line. I think Alabama wins, but I do think it's a lot closer than maybe what Vegas is thinking.
So let's talk now about A&M Mississippi State, because those of us close to A&M think eventually this offense is going to get figured out. And we've seen it slowly getting better, but it's still not really getting a lot of touchdowns. So what do you think? Is that a fair thought from an outsider that A&M's offense is going to start getting better as the defense gets more ground as well?
Yeah, I think it's a work in progress. I really do. I mean, you go into the season, you think Haynes King is going to be the guy that's going to lead the way. Jimbo makes that switch to Max Johnson. And I feel like eventually they're going to start giving Max Johnson more of the playbook, I feel like, and letting him loose a little bit. You look at the offensive performances, Texas A&M, to me, getting enough out of their running game with Devin to be able to put opposing teams in bad situations. And the defense came up big, at the 1 yard line, and Arkansas fumbled the ball and they returned it 99 yards for a touchdown. But I feel like overall, Texas A&M offensively, they're getting better week by week. I mean, after that App State performance, you're like, okay, wait a minute. What is Jimbo Fisher doing with this offense? And then you looked at Miami. They took the next step. And then you look at Arkansas, and you take in the next step. And now you go into a matchup with Mississippi State where, let's be honest, if Will Rogers gets hot and he throws the ball 50 times, Texas A&M is going to have to muster enough to keep up with them. If there's one thing that kind of scares me a little bit about A&M, how are they going to handle the pass from Will Rogers? How are they going to coverage downfield? Who are you going to break off on? Are you going to play a lot of zone? Are you going to – how's your nickel spot going to be? I mean, Will Rogers has the ability to pick you off down the field. But the biggest thing is Texas A&M put pressure on Will Rogers and force him into mistakes. I think that's what you saw, earlier in the season against LSU, 2 weeks ago, against LSU, where they took advantage of that situation. And now you look at it with what Mike Leach and them are going to do. I mean, go back last week. I know it was Bowling Green, but the kid threw for 6 touchdowns, over 400 yards. I think he had 54 passing attempts. I just feel like if Mississippi State's going to beat A&M, that's the way they have to do it, by passing the football. But I like A&M in this one. They're coming off the win over Arkansas, and I feel like they can continue taking the next step. But the biggest thing that worries me, and we'll see this on Saturday, is how do they handle Rodgers down the field?
Great stuff there. Let's move over to the East in Tennessee. I've been very impressed with them, but I still have my questions, as most people will have questions about the defense and whatnot. But Hendon Hooker, when he's going, it's kind of like that Will Rogers story. They're hard to beat. Are they legitimately the second best team in the East?
I don't know. Right now, it's tough to say because I looked at that Florida game and I said, okay, look, if they beat Florida, they're supposed to beat Florida. Florida is still not as good when it comes to that. Utah game really threw people off for Florida. So I look at this matchup and I feel like, what Tennessee did against Florida, looking at that one, I was like, okay, this will be big for the program, but nationally, it doesn't prove anything to me besides them getting over the hump of Florida, which they did, which was a big part of Josh Heupel and what he's doing as a coach and trying to rebuild the program. The test for me is how they go on the road to Baton Rouge next week, handle that environment. Hendon Hooker probably going to be without Cedric Tillman again, leading wide receiver on the team. If you go to LSU and win, I'll have a better answer for you when it comes to, is this team a national championship? I'm not throwing that out there yet. But to compete in the East, I think we're going to get a better understanding of that one, because you go to Baton Rouge and win, my goodness, you're undefeated. Bama potentially undefeated. Back in Knoxville, another wild environment. We're going to find out real quick if Tennessee is a product of their schedule so far, or if this team actually has enough to maybe compete with Georgia in the East. Not there yet.
All right, so I'll ask you the same thing about Kentucky then. Mark Stoops always got that team ready to roll. They've got Ole Miss, who's undefeated. Tell me this one.
I like Kentucky. I like Kentucky. I like Will Levis as a quarterback. I know he is an outspoken character, and some people can't get behind him, and I get that. But you have to like the moxie from the kid. The biggest thing heading into this one for an 11 a.m. kickoff is Chris Rodriguez is back. So you thought, Kentucky going to Gainesville and getting a win was tough. They did that without C-Rod. So now you get Chris Rodriguez back, and you're able to have a 1-2 punch of either Levis or Rodriguez out of the backfield. To me, that's going to be tough to stop for Ole Miss this weekend, because you don't know which way it's going to go. His first game back, I'm sure he's going to try to go crazy on the field. But I look at Kentucky, and they're blue-collar to me. That's a blue-collar defense, a blue-collar offensive line, just gritty, dirty in the trenches in a good way. I think this Kentucky team, I don't see them competing for a college football playoff or anything like that in a spot. But I do think that, they could go into, let's just say, the Tennessee matchup towards the end of October undefeated. But then, you have a gauntlet in front of them. And how do they handle that with Georgia and a few others in Tennessee? Overall, I like the team. I like what Mark Stoops has done there. I think that they have a quarterback that can do good things the rest of the year with his legs and passing the football. But the biggest thing to me with Kentucky is taking the pressure off Will Levis now. First 4 games, it was on him. Backup running back, Cavassier Smoke, 277 yards in 4 games. Now you get one of the best running backs in the SEC returning. I just think it's going to be a bad weekend for Ole Miss. And I like Ole Miss on offense. I do. Defensively, though, they scare me. And also, look, you get into that point as well. Ole Miss goes into lulls in the second half that have thrown me off, and I can't figure out what's going on. And with Zach Evans, he has a hip pointer he's dealing with reportedly. How much is he going to be a factor? So I'm liking the Wildcats right now, and I feel like they could be a team that sits with 2 losses at the end of the year, and potentially maybe a Sugar Bowl or some Peach Bowl, something along those lines.
Hey, last one for you. It's not an SEC question, but it's just more I'm intrigued by this matchup, Florida State and Wake Forest. I mean, I'm trying to figure out is Florida State really legit? And Wake Forest, I mean, that was a great game against Clemson that did not go their way. How intrigued are you by that matchup?
I am intrigued. First of all, I'm intrigued what day they're actually going to play the game. I think we're going to find probably that out, in the next couple of days with the hurricane coming up the coast, which could throw things off. If you've got to push that thing back to Sunday, man, okay, a little interesting for Wake Forest. But I'm a guy, I like what I saw out of Wake Forest passing the football with Hartman. I think that with Florida State, it's a team that Mike Norvell is really trying to put this offense together and score a lot of points. I think defensively, they're still hampered a bit in the secondary, but I feel like this could be a matchup that maybe throws a little wrinkle into the ACC. If Florida State can win this football game, it does a lot for the program, but it does even more for the fan base. You get that feeling like, okay, we're making strides here, because beginning of the season, we're like, okay, probably Mike Norvell's last year. They're probably going to make a run at Dion. How does this all play out? And now you look at a team that's ranked, got a big game at home. Can they pull it off? I'm very intrigued by that one, and the other one with Clemson, North Carolina State. I think we find a lot about the ACC this weekend.
Hey, Trey, we appreciate it, man. Always good work, and we'll do it again.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.